Mark, go ahead and put the slides up. Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Good evening, folks. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes here, wait for everybody to trickle in, and then we'll get started. Thank you for joining us tonight. Good evening, folks. If you're just joining us tonight, we're just gonna give it a couple more minutes and wait for people to trickle in. And then as we get more attendees, we'll go ahead and start. All righty. Good evening, folks. Thank you so much for joining our September community meeting. We hope you all had a wonderful Labor Day weekend. My name is Jasper View. I work with Marcus Pochner as their community outreach consultant, and I'll be filling in for him tonight. So we are so happy you're all here tonight because we got some really exciting news for the Loretto Heights project. Our Councilman Flynn is out on vacation today, but we have the lovely Dana Montano here. If you do have any questions, she'll be available to answer them. Next slide, please, Mark. So you guys are all professionals at this now. You know the drill and have become experts at these Zoom meetings. So if you have any questions or comments during the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, which we will read out the questions at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it over to our lead, Mark Bukevich, to give us an update on the Loretto Heights project.
Thank you, Jasper. I appreciate the introduction there, and welcome to our Loretto Heights community meeting for the month of September. As Jasper said, I hope everyone had a really nice holiday weekend as we're winding down summer and heading into fall. Before we get into our agenda for the evening, which we'll give a brief update on the construction, Pan Hall, the site development, and also the theater, I wanted to just send out a couple quick reminders. Those that were participating in the Food for Thought process that we had at Loretto Heights, we are continuing that again. Our first Food for Thought packaging is actually going to be this Friday. It is a little bit different than in years past, just simply because of all the site development work that we have going on. The parking, if you are planning to attend, just want to be really clear, please park on Dartmouth. That's the road that goes down the hill and then on the southern side of the property. Please do not park in the parking lot that's behind the school. That is not my parking lot. Our section of the parking lot has been demoed out, so we have to use Dartmouth. If you have any questions or you're confused, reach out to me, call me or send me an email, and I'll make sure that we get you to the right spot safely. So tonight we're going to start off with a little bit of an update on the construction. In the past, we've met Ted Loddick. Ted Loddick is with the Silver Bluff Companies, and he is the person that is overseeing all of the site development out at Loretto. So I would like for Ted to walk us through what's been going on out at Loretto from a construction standpoint and what we can expect to see over the next couple of weeks. So Ted, if you could, quickly walk us through the construction update.
Sure, thanks, Mark. And just in regards to that food for thought, we did construct a gravel pathway alongside of the parking lot down to Dartmouth so that you can access the library building from the backside there. In regards to the site work, much of the same has been going on. If you are watching, you are seeing the topography change quite a bit in regards to the backside. The front side, you're starting to see how the buildings, Pancratia Hall, admin building are sitting up above the final topography. We are quite a bit lower than what was there before. So it does kind of lend to a good view of those buildings once the parks and things are installed. So much of the same, a lot of earthwork going on, heavy equipment moving around. Access to sites have been cut off along the front side. So no more public access around that way. There's only construction access on the west side of the project. And so just beware, there is that access on Irving. That is, it is kind of a blind access at this site right now. So just be aware of that if you are traveling along Irving. Other than that, pipe crews are moving along. We anticipate more crews here towards the end of the week.
And then Ted, we have a few pictures here, so maybe you can walk them through these pictures.
So this picture on the left there, that is from the admin building looking down onto what will be the Grand Lawn site through where that equipment is parked. Over to the right is a parcel for commercial. But the grading in this area is relatively close to what the eventual site will be. Except for, the pile of topsoil and that kind of stuff over here. The picture on the right is looking to the north and east corner of the project, out towards Federal and Bates. Most of that area is relatively close to grade within, 1 or 2 feet. There will be a pond there in the very northeast corner. It has been excavated out, just not final. The plans for that with landscaping and that kind of stuff will hide that pond in the final work. Again, this is out in front there along Federal. The one here on the left is viewing the western portion of the project. The equipment that you see down low on the left, if you follow that out to Irving, that will be the road connection right in that area for what Bates, and I'm not sure what it turns into, but that's where it will connect to Irving right there. So that is the main road through the project.
Great.
The grading is ever changing in through there. So you will start to see the step down of how the home sites will sit on that hillside that has dropped, 100 feet in the past.
Okay, thanks, Ted. So we'll move in here real quick to a couple updates on Pancratia Hall. Jim Hartman, I don't believe, is in attendance tonight, but he did send in a couple pictures. We'll first talk about our first resident, or at least how Jim Hartman put it. If you notice, there's a falcon sitting on top of the Celtic cross on Pancratia Hall, which we thought was a very special site. So Jim took a picture of that. Over on the left-hand side is a picture of one of the units with the tile work starting to go in. You'll notice that the tile is green behind the sink. That's very intentional. Many of you probably know that that was the school color, which was green and white. So that is the reason why Jim Hartman's team picked the green color there, and those are starting to come together very nicely. On this next slide is what used to be the old gym. I think many of you, if not all of you, have been in that gym on tours, and some of you have seen some of the construction going on. But this is the unit that's in the gym that would be closest to the steps. When you came into the gym before, this was the stadium seating that used to be in that gym area. And as you can see, they've retained the basketball hoop in the unit, and that basketball hoop will remain there as well. So these are coming along very, very nicely, and you can see the wood floors from the gym are still there as well. Going on, just wanted to make sure that we talked about the site plan, and we can always refer back to this site plan later on when there are questions. But a lot of the areas that Ted was talking about as far as those images, he was showing the mass grading mostly completed in the front and putting the utilities in along this section here as we're moving along. As far as other updates and previous meetings, people have been asking questions, can you give us an idea when we think the development in different areas will be occurring? This is just an estimate of when the site development should be completed, not necessarily started. So as you can see, we have some of the areas that will be going first. As far as the first areas that Thrive will be working in, will be this northern section. So we should start to see completed homes, sometime in the spring of 2023, potentially with a model home being done in the spring of 2022. Grand Peaks will be working in these first 4 yellow sections. We anticipate some of these blocks also being done in the spring of 2023, so we can start to activate this section of the road. The grocer that we're talking to is wanting to be operational in 2023 as well. I'm not 100% certain if it'll be summer, spring, or fall, but we just put in that number. Once we have this site development completed, then that's when we can put the grand lawn in and then follow suit with the development that will be happening on the northern side of the grand lawn. I don't anticipate the quad being built out until sometime in 2024, just simply because we want to see some of the development occurring around the quad before we put the infrastructure of the quad in place. Otherwise, it'll just get tore up in construction. And then as you're rolling down the hill, really these question marks just depend on how quickly this first section gets built out. It's my understanding from Thrive that they will just work their way down the hill in a sequential order. The reason why we have some of these blocks that are spring of 2022, these are areas that Ted was referencing as far as some ponds for stormwater management. That's why those will be constructed early. It is our intent also to do the work around the cemetery next spring as well. And again, if we have questions about this, we can come back to this slide during the Q&A session. For those that didn't read the paper or know that the bonds did pass through City Council a couple Mondays ago, so there officially will be a bond on the ballot on the November election. If the election is positive and the bond passes through the election, then the Loretto Heights May Bond Feast Theater will be getting $30 million from the bond package. The bond package is a little bit confusing. Originally, when we last spoke, there was going to be one bond vote that has been bifurcated into 4 ballots. One ballot will be for the parks, Another ballot will be for the Western Stock Show. Then I believe there's a ballot for the road improvements and other infrastructure improvements. And then there's a facilities ballot, which is where the Loretto May Bond Feast Theater is sitting. That is the one that we definitely want to make sure that that passes. So it's possible, for an example, that the stock show ballot could fail, but the facilities ballot could pass. Of course, we're hoping that all the bonds pass in order to get all the money back into the city. But that's what we will be going on. If the bonds are approved in the fall, things that would happen is there would be an immediate transfer of ownership of the theater from Westside's entity, which is the ACM Loretto entity, over to the city. And then the city would move forward with the renovation of the theater. Of course, Westside would be very involved with it. We're working very closely, but that would be the thought process. And as far as timing, our hope would be that, drawings could be quickly completed, and then maybe sometime in late 2022 is when they would actually start the renovation work, because the city would have to go through a normal bidding and design process in order to make it happen. There is still going to be a gap. The $30 million will not cover the full price tag of what it would take to bring the theater back to life. We are estimating it's somewhere, 40, maybe a little bit north of $40 million to complete the work. That would include the parking garage as well. So at some point in time in the not too distant future, we'll have to be going out with some sort of a fundraiser. We have had some very early talks, with some organizations on how that fundraiser would go. We feel very comfortable that the money could be raised. So we'll be looking for all of your support, assuming that the bonds are passed, on helping us to raise the other $10 million that are needed. And again, we can talk more about this when we get to the Q&A section, which I think will be coming up here, because I don't really have a detailed presentation for the night with much more information other than this. I thought it would be kind of fun just to have some little trivial items. I think many of you know that Music and Music was the original architect of the theater. This is just some other things that they have done and what they're best known for, as far as their Art Deco and international style. It's very much our intent that if the theater does go forward, the envelope of the building would really remain the same. So it would have that same architectural style as promised in the area plan, and just the internal workings of the theater would be what would be improved. And I think we've showed those drawings in some other presentations that we've done. So with that, I don't have a whole lot more to talk about tonight. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions about different things, and I'm more than willing to talk about any of them. So I guess, Jasper, if we could just start opening this up, and if there are just a limited number of questions, maybe we can even promote the person so they can even ask the question, and we can do a short dialogue as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark. So with that said, let's just move into the Q&A portion. I just want to remind people how to use the Q&A. So there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and click that and enter in your comments and questions, and then we'll go ahead and read the questions and answer them. So the first question that came up is from Sister Marinelle Gage. She said, Jasper, I'm very interested in your background, a Lao or Hmong refugee. And I'm actually, thank you so much for asking that question, because my parents were actually a Hmong refugees from the Vietnam War. And I know that the Sisters of Loretto did a lot to help the refugees. So that's a very awesome part of history that happened there. And thank you for helping my ancestors. Thank you, Marinelle. The next question was, hi, Mark, I'm wondering about what times we could expect people to be parking along Dartmouth. And I assume you mean the part along Dartmouth that is down near Irving. The road gets quite congested during arrival and dismissal. If there are a bunch of food or thought cars parked there during these times, it would become nearly impassable pretty quickly. So maybe talk a little bit about that, Mark.
Yeah, I'd love to. So first and foremost, the food for thought is early operations in the morning. It's a 6 o'clock a.m. start, Gail. So and generally speaking, the packing is done by 7:30 and people are on their way before 8. So I don't think there'll be much of an interference. Further, they'd only be parking on one side of the street. And that parking on the street would be no different than after we improve that section of the road where the road section won't get any wider. Ultimately, we're going to allow the school to park on the street. So it would be the same configuration as to what you'll be experiencing going forward. So I don't think it'll make a difference as to the pickup or the drop off.
Mhm. Thank you for that. The next question we got was from Jackie. They were wondering underground parking, and this is during Ted's part of that. So do you want to talk a little bit about that?
There is no underground parking. We may have confused somebody on the parking. There is going, if you can see the screen here and my hand moving around, this section of the property has been preserved and will be ultimately dedicated to the city for a larger parking lot that will help the theater's operations. It's sized large enough for about 400 cars. This configuration isn't necessarily exactly what it would look like. More recent conversations with Stemple Brown when we were working with them would have that parking garage tucked up a little bit closer to the theater so the walk isn't as far, but built into the side of the hill, not necessarily underground, but where you would cut out the side of the hill and the parking would go into it, so we could preserve the views coming from the arcade that's in between the theater and the library.
Great, thank you. Philip asks, can I download a copy of this presentation? So Philip and everybody else who's on this presentation tonight, we'll go ahead and follow up with all of you. We'll be sending out a recording of this video tonight. It'll be a YouTube link, but from there you can go ahead and review what we talked about tonight and have it for the rest of your life. So thank you for asking that question. JJ asks, what is the strategy for getting our infrastructure bond passed? It's got a good chance, but could use some good outreach.
Yep. And that is definitely a true statement, JJ, and it's good to see you or hear you or see your name at least, JJ. So absolutely, there is definitely an outreach that is going to be taking place. You know, as I mentioned before, the bond package is sliced up into 4 different ballots. The one that we're going to be most interested in, at least for Loretto, is the one that talks about the facilities. We do plan on doing some outreaching. We think it's too early to do it right now. We want to wait till we get a little bit closer to the elections in order to start working on that. There will be plenty of other organizations, you know, for their own reasons, you know, who will be doing their own outreaching. As an example, I would imagine the stock show is going to do quite a bit of outreaching, you know, for their bond initiative and as well as the other projects that are on it. But yes, and JJ, if you have ideas or if anybody out there has ideas on how to reach more of the individuals, we will certainly take that and work with you if you're interested. So maybe the best thing, Jasper, is just to ask people if they are interested in to help with the outreach, you know, to please email me. Don't email the councilman, email me on that one specifically. And we can start working together on strategies and get you involved with some of the strategies that we're working on. Perfect.
Yep. Thank you so much, Mark. I'll go ahead and put your email in the chat so that people have your emails for later. And if they have any great ideas, they can go ahead and share that with you. All right. We have another comment from Marinelle Gage. Many thanks for carrying forward the green and white. Thank you so much, Marinelle. All right. The next question is from Sharon. I'm wondering if you are aware of the homeless people residing in a motorhome to the west side of the property. Maybe yep. Mark, can you talk about that?
Yeah, I certainly can. And Sharon, thank you for asking that question. Yes, we are aware of it. We have been communicating with the Denver Police Department on that. For those that are not aware, there is a camper who has been parked up along Irving Street, just across the street from the Loretto Park, in the area that's actually not too far from Shannon's house, over by the ag ditch area. It is an expired plate camper, and we have been working with the police department. What I can tell you, if you would like to communicate with the Denver Police Department yourself, you have 2 options. You can call the 311 number and let them know, or Commander Fleece is also saying he wants those phone calls to come in straight to District 4. And if you need the phone number for District 4, maybe Jasper, you can throw this number up there. The number is 720-913-0274. We of course want to get help to the people that are living there, but by the same token, we don't necessarily want people, living in areas that they're not supposed to be living. Coincidentally, and I'm not suggesting that this is, linked one to the other, but we did have some pretty significant vandalization on the property about a little over a week ago. Somebody broke a bunch of windows down by the steam plant and decided to spray paint a whole bunch of stuff down there that was just completely unacceptable. So we are very aware of it. We had a couple campers that were also people who were camping on our property. We did have them removed. Just it's simply, first of all, it's trespassing, but secondly, it's just unsafe to be living on an area that's a construction zone. So if we have any other questions on that, Commander Fleece did say that they are running more patrols through the area since the camper's been there and some of these other homeless people that we've been working with. And in addition to that, they will be driving by that camper again tomorrow. So hopefully they can encourage them to move onward.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Mark asked, when will the final overlot grading be completed? Maybe Mark or Ted, could you guys answer that?
Ted, you want to take that?
Sure. The grading portion will be complete sometime in the middle of October. Underground utilities and phasing on the north and northeast side of the campus will be going on, through November. But total construction on the site work, we're looking into late spring, early summer of next year.
Okay, great. And then could you talk about the public roads as well, Ted, in terms of timeline?
The public roads are phased. So the northeast portion, we are striving to get those all paved out this fall. So that is basically the roads that are north of Pancratia Hall. If you were to just draw a line east to west along Pancratia Hall, those roads we are working to try and get those paved out this fall. Phase 2 along inside of the admin building and the rest of the eastern portion, we will have them ready. Winter conditions are what will allow us to do. So I would project those more to be in the spring, as well as the roadways on the west side to be paved out in early summer to midsummer of next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ted. The next question is from Gail, or comment. She says she'll email Mark, but comments that the middle school starts at 7:30 a.m. and the high school starts at 8 a.m. So it's likely that there's a problem, but she wants to make sure that there's a proactive plan to address that problem.
Yeah, Gail, just give me a call. I mean, this isn't a large number of cars that come, and we've been doing the food for thought for over a year now, and it's a pretty small organized group that we have coming in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Sister Marinelle Gage comments, many thanks to Mark for leading us to advocate for the theater's preservation/renovation. The team stands ready to advocate for the additional bond money needed. So thank you so much, sister. Next question is from John and Suzanne. When will Pancratia Hall open to residents? And Mark,
Yep.
you know the timeline of that. Could
I
you
do.
share with us?
The current schedule has a TCO at the end of November, and a TCO stands for a temporary certificate of occupancy. And generally speaking, that's what it means when you can start to move residents in. The hope is that Jim is telling me that he will have people moving in sometime in December.
Awesome. Thank you. And then how can people apply for renting a unit in Pancratia?
Yep, the best way to get on the list is to get a hold of Jim Hartman. I guess if you have Jim Hartman's email, Jasper, you can throw that up there. If not, I can give it to you and put it up there.
Okay, no worries. I'll go ahead and pull that email up and put it in the chat for everybody to reach out to him. But in the meantime, Mark asks, what is the future of the library? Is part of the theater development? Is it part of the theater development? Sorry.
Yep, that's a really great question, Mark. We have intentionally been holding back on any decisions of the library until we knew a clear path forward or a clear path forward of what the theater building is going to be. It appears that it's going to be a theater. We're all very excited about that. There has been discussions with Denver's Arts and Venues that they may need more space than just the theater for other programming activities, office spaces, and other things that they are thinking about out here. That is very loose and very generic at this point. So until we have a final plan for the theater, I promise that I will make no commitments to the library in order to keep it best paired with what happens with the theater structure, if that makes sense.
Awesome. Thank you very much. So the next question is a two-part question. It's a question from Kelsey clarifying parking. So the first part of it is, are you saying that there would be no difference, no different than parking we would see after the development is done? And then there was a follow-up question to that, and she just says, can you clarify what you mean by school, by the school will use this?
Sure. Kelsey, I'm not sure if you're with the DPS or with the DSST, but there is a agreement between Westside and the Denver Public Schools. And part of that agreement that we have is that we knew early on in the process that the Denver Public Schools was using as a accommodation that Westside was giving them when we bought the property, parking on our property. As you may recall, there was parking that was on the north side of the building. That was not owned by Denver Public Schools, nor was that owned by the DSST. Similarly, there were other areas that they were parking when the parking lot to the south was much, much larger. Only half of that was actually owned by the Denver Public Schools. We were allowing the schools to use our parking facility, and we knew under no obligation. We did it out of kindness more than anything. We knew going forward that when we did the development that there would be a parking problem, and we communicated that with the Denver Public Schools. And we tried to work with them to help them find additional parking. And as a result of that, we are allowing Denver Public Schools to park on Dartmouth. Dartmouth is wide enough that when we repave it, we can move the center line of the road and offset it. And then we can have the Denver Public Schools park on one side, and there's still plenty of travel lane for 2 cars to pass. So what will end up happening, if you could see my mouse coming down Dartmouth Avenue along this stretch of the road. Now, whether it's going to be on the south side of Dartmouth or on the north side of Dartmouth, I'm not sure. But I think there's about 40 cars that you'll be able to park along Dartmouth there. And just for clarity, the reason why we control that parking on Dartmouth, that is not a city-owned street. That is a private street that's owned by Westside and the Loretto entity, which is that ACM Loretto. We own that property. There is an access easement that Denver Public Schools has to just drive on that road. And what we've done is we've changed it so now they can start parking on that road. But first, we have to get the improvements onto Dartmouth completed before we will restripe it so it's easy to identify the parking on it. I think I answered it. Can you clarify what you mean by the school will use this? And that's what I meant by that.
Perfect. Kelsey, thank you so much for your question. Really appreciate that. All right, the next question comes from Bill. He comments on the photos of the groundwork that you showed a little bit earlier, and then he follows that up with a question. Can you ensure that the large majority of the trees that you plant will be several inch diameter so that Loretto Heights campus will look more mature and home-like than if you were to plant smaller trees? So maybe talk a little bit about the planning around the trees.
Yeah, I certainly can. We are in a big tree discussion as we speak right now. One of the things, when you start talking about transplanting trees, you don't want to actually transplant trees that are too big because they're a lot harder for a successful transplant. But of course, we don't want 1-inch little pencils sticking out there either, because those do take a number of years, before they look like anything at all. So the sweet spot is that 2 and 3, potentially maybe in some cases up to 4-inch caliper, but it's my understanding that those are sometimes hard in mass quantities to transplant and have success. One of the things that we are thinking about is, how do we, the project and overall will have over 1,000 trees that we're going to end up planting, and those trees are going to go in the public streets and right of ways in the open spaces that we have for the project. So we're worried when we start looking for trees to make sure that we can actually have enough trees, where are they coming from? So we're starting those conversations right now with growers. One thought process that we have is to actually create a little nursery on Loretto itself. The idea was maybe we would do it along the Grand Lawn in that area as a temporary nursery, so the trees could start getting acclimated to Loretto Heights before they got moved into their permanent location. I don't know if we're going to do that as far as the nursery on site versus having a nursery off site, but the long and short of it is that we are planning to buy those trees soon. Own those trees and have them grown with a grower. So when we do go to harvest those trees and plant them in their final destinations, they are much larger than just getting a normal 1-inch little tree that looks ridiculous on the side of a road.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question comes from Rose. What will happen to the theater if the bond does not pass?
Oh, we're not talking about the bond not passing.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, Rose.
Yeah. So Rose, honestly, we're not even considering anything. We have, one mission, and our mission, if you remember early on when we were talking about the theaters, we were going to save the theater, and then we were trying to figure out, well, how do we come up with $40 million? So I think we've crossed a major milestone, by working with the city and getting on this bond initiative. So we first had to, get on the bond initiative. And if many of you remember, we had those town hall meetings and we all waited in line to talk at them, and we all wrote letters. All that was very successful, and we made the list. And then the next hurdle that we had to get over was it had to go in front of city council in order for city council to say, yes, we agree that this should go to the people for a vote, and we were successful there as well. And there were many of us that wrote letters and also stood in line and waited to talk about it during the city council courtesy public hearing that they had. So now it's just part of the next step, where the next step is we all need to work together to make sure that all of our friends and neighbors, that are in Southwest Denver and candidly all over Denver, know how important this bond initiative is to make sure that these bonds pass. So we're not talking about what's going to happen if it fails, because we are focused on it passing.
Mm-hmm. So Rose, anything you can do to help us out, a letter of support, anything like that would be most beneficial. So thank you so much for your question. All right, I got a couple of questions from Guadalupe. The first one is whereabouts were the campers? And then the second question is, what is the gateway from behind my and Sharon's house to the first building complex?
So let's talk about the campers. The camper was parked on Irving Street, up between the agricultural ditch and the cemetery. On site, the camper that we had, actually we had 2 of them, they were hidden inside of what's called an electrical vault. It's a concrete pit that's below ground. We had a person living there. That person did get arrested, actually. They had an outstanding warrant, as it turns out, I guess. But that's where they were, and that was down by the steam plant area. As it relates to the other question, so Mark, Mark, what is the gateway from behind my and Sharon's house to the first building? I don't actually. Maybe we could promote Lupe.
Sure.
I'm not following her question.
Yeah, Lupe, if you're out there, I will promote you to talk, and I'll go ahead and do one more question, and then Lupe, we'll come back to yours. Okay. So the next question is from JJ. The pool / swimming building will be removed from the property, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, there unfortunately is not a plan to repurpose the pool or that structure. Perfect.
Okay, Lupe, if you're on, go ahead and if you could just clarify that question about the gateway, that'd be great.
Oh, yes. How you doing, guys?
I'm doing great.
I got a new little baby. Great nephew.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They just came over to visit me. But anyway, I was just so curious how far away from where the fence line is now are the two buildings that I see here.
Oh, you're talking about these buildings right here?
Yes, Mark.
Yeah.
You know,
Actually, yeah, actually, Brad, I see Brad Wilkins on online too. If
Oh,
he's,
good.
yeah, he probably has a better idea of that exact.
Yeah,
dimension.
Brad, you already know, because I thought I saw them building a road right behind this fence, and only for the fact that the cemetery is there. They
Yeah,
had to swerve that road a little bit, but I'm just curious if
yeah.
I'm gonna have to put
Well,
up some privacy stuff.
Oh, there's Brad. Good.
Hey,
Hey, Brad,
Loopy.
can you answer that
Hey,
for us?
Brad.
Hey,
How are
I
ya?
was just holding my baby, so it's like, oh,
Oh.
that's convenient.
Yeah, I still
Um,
got little Matthew here in my
Yeah,
arms. Oh,
that's
5
adorable.
days old, 5 days old. Only.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
Congratulations.
All that
That's
Mexican
awesome.
hair is on him. Go ahead. Brad.
Well, I wish I had a more specific answer. What I can say is that the first property line of any future townhome that's close to you, Loopy, will be 35 feet off
okay.
of the existing cemetery fence. So it's
So
more
the
like
fence-
40.
The
Yeah,
fence right to the north, where it starts, or the other fence that's on the south side of the cemetery.
Both the south and the east fence. So
Okay.
if you take 35
Yeah.
feet
Oh,
in any direction would be
Okay.
the first property line. And then you have, 5 to 10 feet
Okay.
into the next building.
okay, my mind can envision that. Okay, that's
Yep.
all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Great.
curious, where were those campers at, Mark, that you heard about?
They were right here.
Oh, right there. I thought I saw a camper there, but I didn't
Yeah, I
know.
did too.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's it, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lupe. Alrighty, the next question comes from Monica. She is concerned about the DSST students. So her question is, she feels that it's a very unsafe area for Dartmouth, within inches from parents driving up the road and dropping children off. Are there any plans on the sidewalk being done as a priority for the kids to safely walk on, or are there any plans in providing assistance with traffic and pedestrian safety?
Yep, so that's a two-part question that I'm going to answer for you, Monica. So first and foremost, throughout the whole Loretto Heights campus, and I'm not sure, where you're referring to, where the students are walking from. I have an inkling that you're talking down here in Dartmouth, and I will answer that question second. But those students that are walking from, say, the Dartmouth Heights, or coming from college, coming from the Brentwood Marlee, or even coming from College View on the other side, we are certainly planning for safe pedestrian passageways. Within the whole development, we will have walkways, very wide sidewalks and walkways along all of our streets that we are building. And in addition to that, we will have pedestrian crossings, safe crossings up in the area by Loretto Heights Park. We're going to have hawk signals that are going across Federal Boulevard. Plus we have the light that's here at Federal and Dartmouth. And then there eventually will be another light here at Bates and Federal as well. And then we have all the internal circulation as well, going through the quad and the Great Lawn as an example. But I do believe what you're talking about is parents are coming in down Dartmouth and they're dropping off their students, and you're concerned because there's not a great sidewalk network on the school property. We have also identified that with the school, and we have offered some suggestions to the school. We have offered to build some sidewalks for them. They have not responded to us on whether or not they want those sidewalks, or if they're going to install those sidewalks by themselves. But what I can tell you is there has been discussion about sidewalks along Dartmouth that are the school's responsibility. There's also discussions about safe crossings as it relates to coming across Dartmouth here. There's some pedestrian crossings that are in discussions also with the school, and hopefully that answered the question.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica. All right, the next comment is from Grant, and it's very helpful. Folks can email pancratiahall@gmail.com to inquire about renting at Pancratia. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that and throw that in the chat as well. So Jim and pancratiahall@gmail.com, that both of those work perfectly for renting at Pancratia. The next question is from JJ. How about the older white arts building?
Yep. Definitely. Lupe, and actually, if you don't mind, can you go back on mute? Oh, I think we're hearing your grandson. Thank you. So as it relates to this white building that JJ asked about, that is the building that sits next to Match Buff. That's in this location right here. JJ, that building has a TBD labeled on it. We have had conversations on ideas on how to reuse the building. We've also had ideas on how that building goes away and something works in conjunction with the Match Buff facility. So I can't answer that question one way or the other. It's possible it could stay, but it's also possible at this point that it would go away.
Great. Thank you, JJ, for that question. The next question is from Sister Marina Gage. When the new streets will be completed and signed, I think some of the relatives of those whose names will be used would like to be present for the naming ceremony. Mark, do you know if there will be a naming ceremony of that any sorts?
You know, I'm not aware of anybody mentioning that, but that's certainly something that we could talk about, Sister Mary. Now, again, it's just we need somebody to help me get focused on it, and then have some sort of a celebration. What might be fun, and I don't want to take over the Pancratia Hall grand opening but they are going to have one. But maybe there's a way that somehow we can dovetail the two together, or maybe if we think that we can do a large enough celebration for the naming rights of just streets, we could have a separate celebration. So maybe we can take that one offline, Sister Mary Nell, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Awesome, thank you. The next question is from Rose, clarifying question. Her question is about traffic congestion during drop-off and pickup at DSST. And specifically, she quotes the South Irving and West Dartmouth intersection. And then she also asked another question: what is the timeline to improve the current state of the H lot? It's used as an easy place for buses to park and for families to pull through. So, Mark, could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any idea what the timing is for the parking lot to be improved. That parking lot is owned by the school, the DSST, Denver Public School. That has nothing to do with me or my development. That is 100% the school's responsibility to do whatever it is that they're going to do with it. Again, we brought up early in the conversation when we were going through other discussions with the Denver Public Schools are concerned about the parking, and the DPS said that they would take that on themselves. And Dana, I don't know if you want to chime in on this, from the councilman's office perspective, but I don't really have anything to do with that.
Sure. We don't have any control, like Mark said, of what happens inside of the campus, but our office immediately, second day of school, started receiving complaints from neighbors. Particularly on Amherst, it was trash day, and some of the kids that drive were moving trash cans and parking in front of homes, and trash wasn't picked up. And then cars, parents waiting to pick up kids were waiting on Federal, just sitting and waiting. So we got Denver Police, it's NET team, neighborhood enforcement traffic involved to move the parents along and tell them that they can't sit on Federal. The same thing was happening on Lowell, on Girard, on Irving. So I think the school's done a really great job of communicating with parents, and our traffic engineers are going out this week to look at installing some suggestions for a few no parking signs. Kind of the problem with that is that it's really not, it's difficult to enforce. The police don't enforce no parking signs, but even just having the presence of a sign might alleviate some of that, those parking problems on that small, narrow area along Irving. But we have been working with Department of Dottie within City of Denver with their transportation engineers, as well as Denver Police traffic enforcement, and all the net team, the majority of the net team's work is around schools. So they've done a great job going out, telling parents, you can't sit on Federal, you can't sit here, you have to move things along. We did get a complaint from Mount Loretto Apartments that parents were using that to pick up their kids. They were parking in those spots. They were also dropping off kids. So Mount Loretto now has their management, and I think they have like a site manager. They have been going out and telling parents, asking parents please not to drop, it's private property, to please not pick up and drop off their kids. So I think just everybody collectively working together, but the ball is definitely in the court of Denver Public Schools to try to, they have their own set of traffic engineers that work on these kind of traffic situations. And I think, Mark, aren't they meeting weekly with your team?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, we're trying to help them in any way that we can. So again, we're trying to be accommodating. We've offered a number of suggestions, and we're doing our best to work with the school.
Great. Thank you so much for that answer. Okay, the next question is a follow-up or comment. Thank you. So not residential West Dartmouth. And that was in relation to, see here, the last question was, oh, the parking. This is Kelsey's question about, are you saying there will be no difference than the parking we would see after the development is done?
Yeah, so if she's referring to, yeah, we are not building any new residential along Dartmouth here at all. So the residential by the Catholic Charities up along Federal is existing. The school is obviously on the other side. There's a senior care facility, and then of course the Dartmouth Heights apartments. And I'm going to jump ahead here a little bit. Somebody asked if there's any coordination, with the Dartmouth Heights apartments, and the answer is yes. There's lots of coordination that we've been doing with the Dartmouth Heights apartments, making sure that we have connectivity between Loretto Heights with bike paths and walking paths that make it very easy for people to move from the Loretto Heights into the Loretto Heights redevelopment.
Great, thank you, Mark. The next question comes from Sister Minell Gage, and I think this is a great question for you and Mark to talk about. The comment was, in terms of the trees to be planted, would there be an interest in inviting persons to buy a tree, which at maturity would bear a small plaque in honor of, in memory of? So I think this is a great comment. Maybe you guys could follow up offline and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and actually I'll talk about that now.
Oh, okay, great.
On the surface, that seems like a brilliant and an amazing idea. The issue is that, and I've done it on other projects, is what happens when the tree dies. It's kind of an awkward feeling. And so generally speaking, attaching a name to a tree, I personally try and stay away from. It's something that, Mother Nature has more control over it than you do at times. And you certainly don't want to have somebody's name on a tree that dies.
Great. All righty. Thank you so much for that, Mark. The next question or comment from Monica. Dartmouth west of Federal, the only road currently that you can drive to DSST.
Yep. That is the way that it was before. When the DSST built their school, they built their school tucked in and hidden. So that's what it was. That's what it's going to be. And for clarity, everybody that was part of the small area plan remembers very distinctly there was a lot of concern originally about Dartmouth going through all the way to Irving and Julian here. And the community absolutely didn't want that. So that is the why there is no connectivity with Dartmouth going through. And then the other reason why don't you see Dartmouth go north, if you've been out there, also that there's a tremendous amount of topo, a great elevation changes. And from an engineering standpoint, it just simply doesn't work to go in that direction.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Mark. The next question we have is from Philip. Are there any conversations with RTD about additional service to the area?
Yeah, absolutely. I I don't know if you know this or not, but there is going to be a bus stop right in front of the grand lawn, about where my finger cursor is moving around. That will be a bus stop. We'll have a bus shelter that's in that location. So there will certainly be an RTD stop there. Way out in the future, South Federal Boulevard is intended to be a rapid transit line. That's not any time in the near future. But as a long-term planning for RTD and transportation network, Federal Avenue will be one of the north-south rapid transit lines, meaning it's a rubber wheeled system. So buses that are traveling in dedicated lanes, similar to what Colfax Avenue is talked about turning into as well.
Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So with that, that was the last question that we had here, and we're doing great on time. So if anyone has additional questions that they'd like to ask, please feel free to do so. And while people are doing that, I just want to remind everybody that we will have another community meeting next month on October 5th. We will be sending out an additional reminder so that everybody knows that we have another one coming up, but every Tuesday of the month, we will have the first Tuesday of the month, we'll have a community meeting. So another question from Monica, follow up to my concern regarding Dartmouth and West Federal. It is the north side of Dartmouth near your current construction site. There is heavy machinery work and nowhere other than the street for kids to walk. Yes, this is the only road. However, there used to be a sidewalk, which is no longer there. So maybe talk a little bit about the safety along that side, and maybe the timeline, I think, would also help for that as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we are certainly planning to build it. There will be a new sidewalk on the north side of Dartmouth up in this area. There is an existing sidewalk, I believe, on the south side of Dartmouth there that existed there before, and it'll exist there in the future. So I guess what I would do is just encourage, I believe there's a sidewalk on the south side. I think there is. But at any rate, I think we would encourage it. And if that's an ongoing problem, maybe and there is no sidewalk on the south side and I'm wrong, maybe there's a way that we can work with Dottie to repaint, the entrance there, maybe get some cones put up to give the kids a barrier to walk in. I don't know, Dana or Ted, do you recall, now I'm second guessing myself, is there a sidewalk on the south side of Dartmouth right here?
Yes, I believe there is one on the south side. There was not one on the north side.
Yeah. So I guess, Monica, what we need to encourage the kids, and through communications at the school, is to walk on the south side of Dartmouth here, where there is a sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's not adequate, what can we do, to make it safer? Are there cones that need to be put up? Is there something that we can do with Dottie, in order to make that safer for the kids that are coming in off of Federal? We absolutely would like to work with the school on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica, for thinking about the safety of the children. That's great. All righty. The next question we have is from Tim. What is the name of the grocery store?
It's a nationally recognized organic grocer.
All righty. That'll work. So with that, again, go ahead and submit some more questions. We're doing great on time. We'll go ahead and hang out a little bit here until we get any more questions. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions. If you do have any additional questions that you would like to follow up on after this meeting has ended, please feel free to reach out to Mark. I put his email in the chat so for everybody to see. Go ahead and reach out to him directly, and he'll answer your questions as he always does so well at. But with that, Mark, do you have any last words or last comments for the group?
No, again, just like always, we really appreciate, I think we saw, close to 40 people online, which is absolutely amazing. And I want to say thank you for everyone that takes the time, to listen in. If there are topics, that you would like to hear more about, every meeting that we have is a little bit different. But if you have topics, please, bring those to my attention, and we will try and discuss them in more detail. I do like to have the the large amount of time for questions and answers, because I know there's a lot of things that come up, like from tonight, we were talking about the DSST school and the accessibility and the parking and, some of the homeless people that we've been challenged with, that we're working with, that need help. So those are important topics. In addition to, we really appreciate everybody being patient with us, as it relates to our construction activities. We are doing our best to make sure that we are keeping them to a minimum. We know it's disruptive, and we're trying to get through it as quickly as possible. But soon, very soon, Loretto Heights is going to be a really wonderful place. A wonderful place again, I should say. It was a wonderful place before. It's just going to be, a new wonderful place that we can all enjoy. And I appreciate your patience, and I welcome, the ongoing communication. Looks like we just got a few more questions here, and I have time, and I'm happy to answer these.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the question came from Frances. A huge amount of dirt is being moved, and it is a shock to community. She's wondering, how are we informing the public about these construction changes? Maybe Ted, could you talk a little bit about that stuff, or Mark?
Yeah, no, let me take that. We are having monthly community meetings. There is no obligation for us to do these community meetings. We want to do them because we want to inform the public. We have sent flyers out in the past, making sure people know about our community meetings. We've been talking about the construction starting, for a long time on this project, before we actually started out there. So it is an ongoing communication. So I guess I'm not 100% certain why you're asking the question on how we're informing the public, when we're having these meetings on a monthly basis. So maybe, Frances, if you want to give me a call tomorrow and you have some other ideas on how we can inform the community in a different way that maybe we're not doing, I would love to hear that. And we would definitely be open to doing more outreach, if you think that we're falling short in certain areas.
Yeah.
Then Mary, now I'll hit these here real quick. We're not having a contest on who can name the name of the grocery store. I'm thinking many of you probably know already. But thank you for asking. It says, last question here. I've heard varying questions, varying answers for who owns Dartmouth. Can you please give me more clarity? Sure, I'll give you very clear. I own it. Westside Properties is the owner of Dartmouth Avenue. We own it from currently today from the section that comes in off of Federal all the way down to where Dartmouth ends today. It is a private road, and it is owned by an entity of Westside, ACM Loretto 6. We are going to be recording our plat with the city and county of Denver sometime hopefully next week, assuming that we get approved by city council on Monday. When that happens, the city and county of Denver will own Dartmouth from Federal to this intersection, and then all of these roads that are going into the property. This section of road from this intersection where this hand or mouse is down to the bottom over to this point will not be owned by the city. The city would not accept ownership of that road. We did try to dedicate that to the city as city right of way. The city refused to take it. And the reason why the city refused to take it is because it does not meet the city standards. We could not meet the city standards on that road. And there's two reasons why. One, where Catholic Charities was built and where the Denver Public School was built, the road is too narrow. The only way that you could make the road wider is either the school would have to give property or Catholic Charities would have to give properties. In both cases, it just wasn't feasible with the structures that they have built there. And the reason number two is that there's a steeper slope here that doesn't meet the city standards, and they wouldn't accept the road with that existing slope that was in there, and there wasn't any way to fix it as it relates to where the road comes in and where the schools are. It was an impossible task to fix that sloping issue. So hopefully that clarifies. It will be owned long-term by a Westside entity.
Okay, so follow up to that is, who has the final say on intersection South Irving and south side of Dartmouth?
Oh, yeah. So over here, part of our development agreement with the city did ask us to improve that intersection down here at the bottom. It is owned. There is right of way that the city owns. It just needs to be improved. And we will be improving that intersection so it doesn't look like a cul-de-sac. It'll actually look like a road going into the right of way of Irving Street there.
Okay, perfect. And then Mark, sorry, a follow-up to the follow-up question. What does the ownership for that road mean in terms of snow and ice treatment?
Sure. Gail, there is a reciprocal easement agreement already in place on how the maintenance of that works. And if you give me a call tomorrow, I can walk you through that in detail.
Okay, perfect. And then the last two, Francis, if you do want to talk, I'll go ahead and allow you to talk, and then I'll come back to you after this other question. But I just allowed you to talk. So Lane, the question is, you sure use a lot of water, and then they denote that where Colorado is a drought state. So she says, I noticed that you get a tap right into the Denver fire hydrant. So how does Denver charge you for water that is if there's no meters?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I am very aware that there's a drought going on. We are required when we do earthwork to water the dirt for a couple different reasons. One, we have to just so that we don't have a dust nuisance out there. And two, you need it in order to have engineered compaction as the work is being done. As it relates to the tap in of the hydrant, yes, we are tapped in there, but there is actually a meter there that's put in place by Denver Water. And believe me, we are paying for every ounce, a droplet of water that's coming out of there.
Awesome, thank you. And then Francis, go ahead and answer your question.
Thank you very much, Mark and team, for letting me speak. Fran Coleman and former state representative, and once a representative, people never forget, to be honest with you. So a lot of people have come to me and they're just shocked at all the dirt and all the trees that were knocked down and all that stuff. I do explain to them that you have been more than patient, almost 3 years of involving the community and trying to save as much historical of the buildings and and also the footprint of what was Loretto Heights. So I do give them all the positives, but they're still pretty shocked. So and I can understand flyers, I can understand these community meetings, but it seems to me like we're missing, and also Kevin Flynn's newsletter, because he has done a good job with that, but I don't think it's enough. And I don't quite know what the answer is, other than maybe trying to get on NPR, CPR, or doing articles in the Denver Post that maybe can start getting more and more of the word out on exactly what's happening, what's being saved, and what the community asks for. So that's where I'm coming from. I try to do my best to inform people, but sometimes it's not enough.
Sure, Fran, and I appreciate that comment. And we hear that over and over again, that there's not enough outreach. Just by way of example, for the last community meeting that we just did last month, we actually, West Side went out and paid for 700 flyers to be delivered to all of the residential units that are adjacent to the project. So, we are continuing to do that to make sure. And honestly, I think there's a better likelihood of somebody looking at a flyer than hoping that they read the Denver Post or hoping that they, listen to the radio or what particular radio station. And again, if I knew that I could catch, 5 people and do an article in the Denver Post, we would. There's been lots of articles about this project in the Denver Post. There's been lots of news broadcasts about it as well. And again, those are not necessarily articles that we have put out, but they are certainly articles that have been put out. But as it relates to, the flyers, I can tell you with 100% certainty, there were 700 of them delivered just for the last meeting. We did not do it for this meeting, but we did do it for the meeting before.
Thank you so much, Fran. We really do appreciate that comment. And just so if you know someone that would be interested in joining our community meetings, please send them the link. This type of meeting is open to the public. So whoever that is interested, please let them know that we host this every first Tuesday of the month. But then again, thank you again, Fran. Okay, with that, that was the very last question. So we really do appreciate all of your time here with us tonight. Again, our next community meeting is on October 5th, and we'll be sending out a reminder agenda for that meeting. So thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, and you all have a great night.
Thank you.